What's going down? This your man Don T of Don T Records Music Group, and today I got something special for y'all. I'm gonna give y'all a mixed breakdown of the song titled Run the Race. And I want to give a big shout out to my man Kenny, the artist of this song, for allowing me to use this song to share with you guys and show you some of the things I did to get this mix where it is right now. And I actually did the master also. So from the start, a good mix starts with the music. Got to have quality sounds, and then also the vocal input. You got to have a quality vocal recording. All right. So if you want to get a good mix, you got to make sure these things are straight first. Making sure you got a good beat with good selection of drums, snares, hi-hats, good instrumentation, and all that, which makes a good mix. And a lot of times I find that the producers are actually doing some level of mixing when they're producing the track. So I try to listen first before I make any move. But without further ado, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, and let's jump into it. Let's go. All right, so check it out. So here's a song we're looking at right here called Run the Race, okay? We finished this up yesterday. I actually put this thing out yesterday, and it's a great song. Sounds great, okay? So I'm going to bring down my mix window. All right, so here's my mix window. And as you can see, I got the first track is the reference track. And then I have 808, but it's got a sample sitting on top of it. And then I have another 808, claps, snare, hi-hats, and here's my drum bus. All right, so anyway, first thing I like to do when I start a mix is I listen to the reference, the rough, to see what it sounds like, because my goal is to make it sound a whole lot better than the actual rough. Okay, and actually this was a mastered rough that I was listening to, so I wanted to make it better and enhance it, what was already there. So first thing I do is, again, I'll listen to the track before doing anything to it, and I'll play a little bit of the track right now so you guys can hear it.
Stop for the race, then I win it. Fighting a good fight of faith to the finish. Your glory to God is the praise that I'm giving. I'ma keep preaching, no likes or no mentions. The Bible is true, we don't care about your feelings. David Goliath, I kill him with the rock, that's Jesus, you get it. They blended the masculine and feminine, but what did he say in the beginning? This ain't no argument, going back and forth for God. This ain't no tennis, no ping pong, no challenge, no rival. You know when he died on the cross and he rose for the dead, he told Satan, I'm taking the title. Crushing your idols for every hater, yeah, greater. Big man, when he come back one day, yeah, Alpha and Omega. This ain't no Willa, no Jada, my God ain't no beta. Exposing imitators, casting out demons in the black holes raiders. Jesus fasted in the wilderness with a snake sat right back.
All right, so you get the idea. So first thing I start to do when I get a mix is I try to look at, I'm gonna go back to the other screen real quick, look at the wave files to see whether or not they're stereo or they're mono, okay? So I'll make it big and I'll look at the wave file to see if there's a difference in what I'm seeing as far as left and right on the track. So let's look at this main bell, for example. So you can see here on this bell main, you can see how the wave on the left side is different from the wave on the right side. So you can actually see that one's a little bigger, and maybe that's because it's been panned off or there's an effect on it. And so if I see this, then I'll leave it stereo. But then that's not always the golden rule, but it is a rule that I use, because some things I just want in stereo anyway, depending on what it is. Like a string, for example, a lot of times I would want those stereo. But for the drums, I notice a lot of mix engineers, they leave everything as a stereo file. But for me, if it's mono, I like to make it mono. And what I do is I'll match the level of the stereo version of it. So I will actually make sure that this mono 808 sounds just like the stereo 808, which is actually mono because both sides are the same. So if both sides are the same and they're pan hard left and right, it's still considered to be mono, okay? There's got to be some difference on the left versus the right side to consider it to be stereo. And there are programs or plugins, let me say, that will help you decide on what's mono and what's stereo. So that's the first thing I do. I'll turn everything to mono and I'll leave things that are stereo as stereo, okay? Where I start with my mix is I start with the drums, okay? So I like to start with the 808 and what I'm listening for on the 808 and I'll turn off all monitors except for my sub because I just want to listen to the 808 to see how the 808's hitting in the sub. So I'll solo the 808 without any plugins. Oh, well, let me back up a little bit. I'll also do some gain staging first, okay? Now, I may not gain stage everything, but I do like to gain stage certain instruments and also the vocals. I'll gain stage the vocals. So let me not skip that step. So I'll do some gain staging, making sure that things are not clipping plugins and things like that. Yeah, and go from there. And I like to use, to gain staging, I like to use a Hornet plugin, which is pretty cheap. Let me bring it down here so y'all can see it. It's a pretty cheap plugin. And it works awesome. Just hit the auto button right here. It'll go back to 0 and it'll make sure nothing hits over 0. And it'll tell you exactly how much to turn that track down so that it's not hitting over 0. So I start with this 808 and I'll listen to it, see what it sounds like. So I'll listen to it and see what it needs. I'll listen for a couple things here, whether the 808 has enough boom, is it clear in the sub? And if it's not, then I roll some things off. Does it need distortion so it'll cut through on small speakers? So all these things I'm listening for as I'm processing the 808. With of course the producer for this song actually did a pretty good job on the 808, so I didn't do too much to it. And so sometimes less is better, and I'm not trying to add anything extra than what's needed on any instrument. And then we have the hand claps right here. And on the hand claps, I got Pro Q3. And as you can see, let me bring the plugins down so you can see them. And as you can see, I rolled off some of the lows just to get it out of the way of the 808. And then here's a secret weapon, secret sauce. Get your pens and paper out. Get your pens and paper out. This is a secret sauce right here. All right, check it out. All right, so here is the Spectra. I know you've seen Jason Joshua use this, and some other producers use it too as well. And I love to use it because it just adds something special to the signal. It's some sauce that it adds to the signal. And it's not like an EQ because I'm just adding harmonics to a certain frequency range. So I just add a little top end on this thing, a little bit, not too much, not even a dB on the clap. And then I hit it with a little compression. And this is a very transparent compressor. Isotope stuff, it's very transparent. And I like that because it's not going to change my sound when I add it on the claps. And then we got a snare. And on the snare, again, I rolled off what I didn't need. And then I added some compression to it. And that was it on the snare. Hi-hats, very simple. Again, just rolled off what I didn't need. On both hi-hats, rolled off what I didn't need. And you see that's a little bit more, rolled off what I didn't need. And that was it, all right? So got my drums going, and that's the first thing I do is just get my drums popping like I like my drums to pop. And once I get the drums sounding good, I'll listen to it in my NS10s. I'll listen to it with the sub and my focals, and I listen to it in my Steve Slate VSX, you know what I'm saying? And we'll listen to it in there, and if it's right, it's right. And so I'll keep going in a second, but I'm gonna let you hear what it sounds like. So here we go. Okay, so also I realized that the snare, it was dry. Actually, not the snare, but the claps, they were dry. So I had just a little touch of reverb on the claps, and I'll go down to my section here. And so add a little bit of reverb to it. Actually, that's a pan, man. That's not what I want. Snare. Here we go. Just a little bit of room on it. Snare plate, put in the room. I like the room. And I do use bass time effects on instruments and things like that. But at the end of the day, you try to dial it in where it sounds good, okay? So I put a little reverb on the claps. They sound too dry without it. All right, so let's move to my drum bus, okay? I always like to use a bus on my drums. A lot of times, depending on whether I got a lot of instrumentation, I won't use a bus. I feel that it kind of bottlenecks my sound sometimes. A lot of people use a lot of buses, but sometimes it sounds like it's bottlenecking my sound, not making it as big as I would like to have it and as clean and clear. If I don't have a whole lot of instrumentation, I just, I'd rather go without a bus unless I got a great big session, and then I would use a bus, speed up the process, okay? So on my drum bus, this changes, but I got one that actually is now sticking to my drum bus, and that's God's Particle, okay? Jason Joshua, God's Particles. I sparingly use this, add about 37% on the amount here, and turn the limiter to 0 because I don't want no limiting going on. And then I like to use the SSL's compressor to add some glue to the drums. Now, if you don't have these plugins, okay, you can add stuff like saturation and pretty much any compressor will work, but you want to add a little compression to kind of glue your drums together. You can add a little reverb if you like. You can add some parallel processing on your drum bus. And a lot of times, and that's one thing I didn't say, is if I had an 808 or something that needed some more girth, let me say, I would probably do some parallel processing on it to make it sound bigger, make it sound fatter. For that, you can use some standard compression and just blend that back in like the SSL comp, just squeeze it to death. I normally use a send for that to another track, or I don't know if you guys got these plugins, but Baby Audio, you can use parallel aggressor. That's a nice one too to use on drums, on kicks and stuff like that. All right, so I'm just giving you guys some nuggets. And the new one from Baby Audio is the I Love New York 2. Now this thing right here punches a lot. And that, man, I tell you, that sounds great on drums. So if you got opportunity, you can go ahead and grab that. But other than that, if you don't have those things, you can add some compression and then add some saturation right after the compression. There's no wrong or right way to do this, but just to get that thing popping and so forth, okay? But if your drum didn't cut through, your 808 didn't cut through, you're definitely going to need to do some saturation, some parallel saturation, and adding some distortion to it to get it to pop, okay? So let's move down. So you see my drum bus. So on the melodies, like these instruments, I'm telling you, when I mix, I start with the main instrument of the song. And this melody was the main instrument. And as you can see, I just did a roll off here. I scooped out some of this here at 2004 kilohertz. And that was so that the vocal could cut through. And that wouldn't be in the way of the vocals. And I dipped it in the midsection. And that's it, because it sounded good to me already. And sometimes you don't have to do a whole lot. And that's the same thing with the rest of these instruments. I'll listen to them. Find out what do they need, and a lot of them didn't need a whole lot, okay? So it had some processing already on it. That's what I'm saying. It had quality instruments, and so it didn't require a whole lot. Now, some sessions may require a little saturation. I like to use the Fab filter for saturation, and also the Spectra by Wave Factory, the one you just saw. I like to use that as well to boost anything. If I'm boosting something, a lot of times I'll grab that, or depending on what it is. If it's a string, I may use the API because it's got a nice high end on it. So I may use that, okay? So let's keep going. All right, so you've seen most of the instruments. Not a whole lot going on as far as what I did to them. And that's because it sounded great without a whole lot of processing. And so you just got to listen to the music, listen to what the music needs. And that's what you do. You add to it at that point. So if you listen to her, all right, so let's go ahead and move down to the vocals. All right, so vocals, again, I gain stage the vocals because I am going to use some sort of emulation, okay, type of plugins, right? So I'm going to use some of those type of plugins, and so I want to make sure I can hit that sweet spot. First, I got the intro, and I got auto-tune on there, not doing a whole lot here, just, keeping things in key a little bit. Then I have the 1176 by Universal Audio. Then I got Bell Effect. I use the Pro Q3, and this is actually a preset in the Pro Q3. I added some reverb. I used the R-Verb Hall. And then I used delay, half note delay on that vocal. And so here's what it sounds like. I'm just gonna solo it so you can hear it.
Say that, preach, preach, preach. Yeah.
Okay. So if I'm gonna basically take most of the frequencies out anyway, it really doesn't require me to do subtractive EQing to try to clean it up because pretty much all the frequencies are gone anyway. So don't waste a whole lot of time trying to clean it up and then add a bell or something like that. But I do that sometimes where I'll just take the processing from the lead or what have you and add that whole chain on something and then do a bell. It depends. It just depends. So I got one of the lead vocals here. So she's chopped up a lot. And I guess you're probably wondering why is it so chopped up? Well, I'll tell you why. It's chopped up because I like to keep things as natural as I possibly can. And it may take a little time as I'm cleaning the vocal up. So that's like one of the first things I do when it comes to mixing vocals is clean those jokers up, man. You got to clean them up. I don't like to use noise reduction plugins because every plugin that you add is adding something to it because it's attacking some frequencies or whatever that plugin's doing. And it's taking something away if I put it on the entire vocal. So I kind of just stay away from that and just kind of do it manually. I like to manually DS, but I do add a de-esser at the end. But I like to manual DS. I like to take out the breaths. I don't like to use plugins to take out the breaths. And so that's what all these cuts are. That's me manually taking out breaths, manually de-essing, and so forth. It just sounds so much cleaner to me and so much more natural that I don't have to do any additional processing. And I know a lot of you probably saying, well, man, that's crazy. But hey, that's just how I like to do it. You know, when it comes to vocal riding, if there's something that's too loud or too low, I like to use the gain, clip gain in Pro Tools to actually adjust the volume instead of automating the fader in the system. So I like to do things that way, okay? And so if the lead vocal, you'll see I got my subtractive EQing going on. Here, I use a combination of static subtractive EQing and dynamic. And the reason I use the dynamic is because the problem's not always there. If I use a dynamic EQ, it's because the problem comes, but it's not always in the signal. But when I use a static, that means there's something there all the time. So just remember that. That's when to use dynamic versus static EQ. And I just rolled off some low end, and I used another dynamic EQ low shelf here. And I also used auto gain as I'm processing. So the gain is made up as I'm taking things out. Then I like to hit it with some compression after that. But there's one secret I did not tell you. And that secret is I also have a hybrid system. So as I'm mixing, I have things set up already, external gear. I'm a dangerous man. So I got a lot of dangerous gear. If you've seen one of my videos, the dangerous back EQ, and I normally set these things up to a certain place and I kind of leave them there. And it also depends on the song on what I actually do on some of the pieces that I have externally. I have 2 shuffled Neve channel strips that are in my signal chain. I have the warm audio compressor, the bus comp, I have the 80 plus. I have the dangerous D-Box plus, back EQ. I have the converter 2, converter 8. So I have a nice selection of outboard gear that's actually playing a role in my mixes as well. I got some other sauce for you here. So stay tuned. Don't go nowhere. I got some other sauce for you too. I'm going to give you some other sauce. So then, like I was saying, right, when I want to boost some things, I just hit that thing with this Spectra EQ, well, not EQ, saturation is saturation for harmonics, you know. So I didn't mean to say EQ. It's not EQ, okay? Sorry, it's not EQ. All right, so I normally hit it with that. Then neutron, right? So I come back with a neutron. Like I said, the isotope stuff is very transparent. And so as I'm fixing other issues that I hear in my signal, it's not changing the sound. It's not getting darker. It's not getting brighter. And that's why I like this plugin, because it's transparent. Then I come back with Fab Filter Pro DS, and I'm just hitting it with that to control more S's and T's and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm hitting it with the Soothe 2, kind of more on the high side, control the high side a little bit. Almost the default setting, but it's really not. Because I got a couple changes as far as the depth, the quality here, some changes there, and then also on the mix. And that changes from mix to mix depending on what's going on, what's needed. Then I hit it with some saturation, basically give it some warmth tape to warm the vocal up. And then I hit it with some limiting. Okay, I like to use L1 limiter. Some cases I may throw a compressor there. It just depends. Yeah, it all depends, because on some mixes, I might throw a LA2A right after the 1176 right here. So I might throw one after that. And that's just for tone, though. That's the only reason. Not a whole lot of compression going on with it, just for tone, for the most part. So every other verse is pretty much the same as this verse. There are some exceptions. The second verse might have sounded a little different, so I might have had to tweak a few things just a little different, which I did in this song to brighten the first verse, because the first verse was a little bit darker than the second verse, and I'll show you why, because the first verse was kind of laid back, and the second verse had a lot more energy. All right, so ad-libs, which my ad-lib track is right here. And so most of my ad-libs are on the second verse. I did have a duplicate of the first verse where I added another effect that was not on first verse. It wasn't on there. And I did that because I had space, I had room, and I didn't feel like doing a whole lot of automation. And so I just pulled them down. The parts I wanted to have I put a half delay on there that I wanted to echo out a little bit, and I just put that on there. So we look at the ad-lib track, okay? Only difference in the ad-lib track is once I put all the same processing on there, and I do this sometimes. Sometimes I don't, depending on what I'm doing, if it's a bell effect or I just rolled off a whole lot of the low end and so forth, and, you know, there's not a whole lot of frequencies to be dealt with. I would just do a compression and roll off some low end or whatever and compress it to death and put it in the background, depending, okay? So here I just rolled off a lot of stuff, dipped out some stuff. So when the lead came in, that, you know, in this area here, I wanted to hear the lead more than I heard the background, even though the backgrounds are panned off. They're actually automated a little bit. So I did some automation on the panning, as you can see here, back and forth, about 30% left and right. And that worked for me on that. Sounded great. Then I added some effects, basically doing some stutters, couple stutters to make it sound exciting right here. And I'll let you hear that, what it sounds like. So I got the main stutters here. That stutters, yep. And up here. So there's like two pair here. So let's take a listen, see.
I cannot stop from the race that I win it.
Okay. So here's panning back and forth.
I cannot stop from the race that I win it. Fighting.
And then if we go down, then I got my backgrounds. Of course, I already showed you kind of sort of what I did. I used the same effect, but I rolled off some things, okay? And then we go down a little further in the song. I did another stutter vocal. And on this one, I had to run it to a bus. All right, because I had to add more reverb on it, as you can see here. So I added more reverb and also all the original processing that's on the rest of the vocals. So let's take a listen what it sounds like. And then on the bus, I got reverb. I'm using the R-verb. And then I'm also using the Pan Man by Sound Toys. All right, so let's take a listen.
Jesus fasted in the wilderness. Jesus fasted in the wilderness. Jesus fasted in the wilderness where the snake.
Okay, so there's another effect I did. Okay, so I had myself as a sound engineer recording this song. I was talking to the artist, and we decided to put me in there talking to him right here.
But check it out. Can we just try that one more time? And this time, I want you to bring a lot more energy to it. All right, let's go.
And so here, as you can see, I did take out some frequencies on this. I just used 1176 to compress. I used the Soothe too, but this time I left it at 100% and at the default settings. And then I used a Pro Q3 and I made it a bell effect. Okay. So here's what it sounds like again.
But check it out. Can we just try that one more time? And this time, I want you to bring a lot more energy to it. All right, let's go.
Okay. All right. So that's all that processing. Okay. And down here, what I got, I like to add, normally I would use a plate verb on my vocal, but this time, as I listen to it, and the way I like to add reverb is I like to turn it all the way up, see how it sounds. The plate, tend to make it sound like he was in a bathroom. So I got a room on there instead, a dark vocal room, instead of a plate, some pre-delay, and this is my decay time. Rolled it off up here, but also I did some scooping out here as well in the vocal. Make sure the reverb did not interfere with the vocal and the track didn't become muddy. Mostly the same processing on the hall. Just got a different color. Valhalla, vintage verb, concert hall, 1970s color, small hall. But I'm using 2.4 seconds here. And you can see I dialed that back way back that time. I didn't want it to be as bright. I wanted it to be dark. I didn't want it to be as bright as my room. I wanted my room to be brighter. Then I had a quarter delay, so I used the H delay, quarter delay, turned it on lo-fi. Also did some roll off here, but I rolled some more off here and here. And then I also like to add some reverb to my delays. I don't like dry delays, so make sure you add reverb to your delays, okay? Don't want no dry delays, okay? and here's my half delay. And these are automated, so I got some automation going on. It's in the ping pong. Actually, it's an eighth of delay here. Said half, okay. So I might have changed it. I might not like the half how it sounded and change it to an eighth. So there's some automation going on here on various parts of the song with this plugin. And you can look down here, you can see the feedback and some of the changes made here. So there's some changes going on here, okay? All right, so let's get down to the sauce. All right, I know I'm boring you to death. All right, but I'm gonna get you some sauce now. Let's get some sauce, okay? Because I gotta just, break it up a little bit. All right, because I know you've been watching, and I'm just talking, right? I'm going through it. I'm giving you some nuggets, but let's break it up a little bit. All right, so my mix bus, okay? Here's where some of the lifting's going on, and so I like to use the golf floss on my mix here, and this changes mix to mix. I like to have it on there. Now, after this, I like to use this compressor. Sometimes I'll use the SSL depending. But this here sounds good, and I'll go back and forth just to see which compressor I like, okay? So I'll check, you know what I mean? And then I like adding saturation to my bus, gotta add that saturation, man. I always love saturation, man. It smooths things out, you know what I mean? So I like to add saturation. Then I use this EQ from BrainWorks. And basically, I'm not doing a whole lot on this. I like to use the mono maker and the stereo section. So I kind of set my mono, whatever I want to set it at. I'm talking about right here and here. For the sides, sometimes 100, sometimes lower than that. It depends. It depends on what sounds right. So I use my ears. This is just here because I like the tone of it. It gives this tone. It's not doing anything. There's no EQing on it or anything. It's just there because it gives me a vibe. It gives me a tone, gives me some warmth. Okay. Then I like to use the API. I like to boost that high end, that 20 kilohertz. I like to give me a little bit at the low end, about 100, boost that up a little bit. And then I get into my limiting. So I like to hit it with ozone. And I may use a different one, but I like to use this one. And I'll play with the character a lot because you can get a different tone when playing with the character, get a faster attack, get a different tone and all that. And then I like to hit it with another limiter. And again, playing with the release times. I'm adding some more saturation here. Here's my ceiling that I keep. Yeah, and try to make it sound great. So you guys are getting some nuggets. But what's always on my mix bus is tonal balance. So I like to check and see where I'm at as far as balance my mix. So I like to keep this there so I can go back and forth and look. However, don't let this be the deciding factor on how you mix your song. If it sounds good, then go with it. Don't say, well, my drums are too loud because I'm outside of this box. So again, use your ears, make sure it's what you want, and go from there. And then another thing that lives on my mix bus is the VSX Steve Slate. Okay, great set of headphones to reference your mix. It's got a lot of different studios in it to be able to go through and see what you sound like. I like to use the cell phone on here because I want to make sure my 808's cutting through. And if it's not, then I'm going to fix it. So I'll use a tape player as well, the boom box. Instead of calling it a tape player, the boom box. I'll use the boom box and listen to it in the club and in the car, in the ride, okay? So these are very nice. Great job on this, Steve Slate. So I love to use this. That helps me get my mixes to a good place. So with that being said, hey, I gave you guys some nuggets today, bro. And sisters, cousins, aunties, uncles. I gave y'all some nuggets today. So we're going to do, I'm going to let y'all hear a little bit of this song here. I'm going to let y'all hear the second verse of the mix. And also this is out now, so you can get it. You can go listen to it and, support, share, like, share that video, share that video so somebody else can hear it and get some good music. So let's take a listen to the second verse of the song, and then we're going to be out of here. So check it out. Give me a few minutes more of your time. Let's go.
But check it out. Can we just try that one more time? And this time, I want you to bring a lot more energy to it. All right,
vibe out with me. Let's go.
I cannot stop in the race that I'm winning. Fighting a good fight of faith to the finish. All glory to God is the praise that I'm giving. I'ma keep preaching, no likes or no mentions. The Bible is true, we don't care about your feelings. David Goliath, I kill him with the rock, that's Jesus, you get it. They blended the masculine, feminine, but what did he say in the beginning? This ain't no argument, going back and forth for God. This ain't no tennis, no ping pong, no challenge, no rival. You know when he died on the cross that he rose for the dead. He told Satan, I'm taking the title, crushing your idols for every hater, yeah, greater. Big man, when he come back one day, yeah, Alpha and Omega. This ain't no Willa, no Jada, my God ain't no beta. Exposing imitators, casting out demons in the black holes raiders. Jesus fasted in the wilderness where the snakes sat, rat, bats, and gators. Pray for his favor, your homie can't save you. On that great day, we'll be all judged later. None of your paper, none of your accomplishments, none of your compliments, it would not save you. Unless you got the savior, only the blood of the Christ will keep you alive like a pacer. I'm trying to keep God in my central division, something like an Indiana Pacer. God is to drive behind the source like a piston. Praying for the young bucks, young bulls missing. Thinking they can cut in line, bully their way, interfering, just to find out they was Rooks Cavalier and found out the hard way.
All right, that's what's up. Hey, yo, thanks for tuning in. This is Don T Records, Don T Records Music Group. I hope that you got something out of this. I mean, I went in too far sometimes, but that's what I do, man. I'm like a teacher, right? So I go in a little bit too far, show you some other things that may not even be in this mix. I should have just stayed with the mix, but, I get a little carried away sometimes. So go ahead and like, subscribe, share this video, tell your friends about it. Hope you get something out of it. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. Yeah, and I hope that you like the song and go get it. It's going to be free. I mean, I ain't asking you to spend no money. It's a free song. Thank you again to Kenny for allowing me to use this mix in this video. Peace, love, all that. I'll see y'all next time, all right? Peace.